We'll begin with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Missoula County acknowledges that this event takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. We have, any public announcements?
The fair is
The
coming.
fair.
Well done, Dave.
Yes, it is free. So come out to the Western Montana Fair next week, I believe it is.
Beginning Wednesday.
Yes, and I believe we will have a booth there, which we will be there periodically. And yeah, come on out and enjoy your great renovated Missoula County Fairgrounds.
Well said.
And the commissioners are passing out candy if you come visit us.
And I believe there's a pet commissioner contest of some sort, is there not?
And it's not one of the three of us. It's
No.
you nominate one of your pets that will best represent the pets of Missoula County.
If there was a fourth commissioner, what would that pet be? And no venomous snakes or reptiles allowed.
Yeah. Public comments on items on the agenda. Violet was saying that there's some folks that would like to speak because they have to leave.
Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I was just hoping to speak to item seven. My name's Blaine Doherty. I work at Partnership Health on the community care team, and I do tenancy support. And the story I just wanted to share is a couple months ago, the mobile support team got a call for a gentleman who was experiencing a mental health crisis, living out of a fifth wheel in the driveway of a family member. They were able to respond and give him immediate support. Then a couple days later, we're able to do kind of a handoff to myself and to my coworkers. And in that process, we were able to connect him up to some medications that he had been cut off from, as well as further medical support. And then in the following weeks, I was able to help him reconnect to some family members he had fallen out of connection with. And through those relationships, we're able to help him find new housing and a beautiful location for his fifth wheel, as well as some meaningful work. So yeah, item 70 would be much supportive of this kind of work that we're trying to continue doing. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Blaine. Any other public comment on items on the agenda, or if you need to leave soon? And is there a Lori Franklin?
Hi there. This is Rabbi Lori Franklin speaking.
Oh, okay. And Rabbi, excuse me, sorry.
Yes. Go ahead.
Did you want to say something because you have to leave early, or would you?
No, I wanted
wait
to
till-
make sure that I would have an opportunity to speak on the crisis resolution, and I wasn't sure if in the format of this meeting you take all the public comment at the beginning or if you take it for each item.
Okay, no, but this is just for a comment on items not in the agenda. And there's some folks in the room who have to leave, and so they weren't able to stay until we got to 7D. So I was
Okay,
offering that.
Wait, thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, does anyone else need to leave? Okay, and did you want to rearrange the schedule, or?
Yeah, it was just an idea up to you being our chair, but given I know there's a bunch of folks here who came to speak to 7D and don't have a real active interest in the land use decisions, if maybe we could do 7D first, then those folks could go back to work and then we deal with those important land use decisions.
Although alternatively, it could be the case that the other folks were planning on their daily schedule first.
Given the look at the audience, that's my guess, but I'm happy to be wrong. So.
How many of you are here to speak to 7D? Would you appreciate us rearranging the schedule?
Saying yes.
Okay. I see a couple over here and I see a head no over here. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
But there's not as many of them.
I don't know whether, so Ben, Matt, and Tim, are you guys able to wait? Okay. Okay,
Yes.
we'll rearrange, oh, the timer. We'll rearrange the schedule. If anyone has any heartburn, let's see it.
They can yell at me.
Okay, yell at Slotnick. We will discuss, we're going to rearrange the schedule and we're going to discuss 7D and then we're going to do 7A, B, and C. So, Chris Lounsbury.
Thank you, commissioners. I didn't know, did you have a claims list you wanted to do really quickly?
Oh, that, yes. Thank you. Claims received as of July 21st to July 26th by the Commissioner's Office, total in $3,423,490, sorry, $493.33. And you can look at that on the county website and drill down to see exactly what claims those are, if you're interested. Okay, all you.
Thank you, commissioners. So Chris Lounsbury, Chief Administrative Officer for the county, and I just wanted to give a quick recap as well as summarize the public comment that you've received online and through electronic means through your email. So again, we're here to talk today about the potential of the commissioners putting on to the November ballot a crisis service levy. As we talked about when you opened the public comment period 2 weeks ago, the COVID-19 pandemic has really highlighted challenges that we have faced, in particular in a lot of areas around behavioral health, homelessness, criminal justice reform, and victim services. And those are the items that are potentially contemplated in this levy. We have been fortunate enough to use one-time federal funding through the American Rescue Plan Act to help stand up some of these new and innovative services in Missoula County, but the long-term funding solution at this point still remains elusive for them. So just a quick recap of what some of those services are. One of those innovative services is a mobile support team, which you already heard a moment of public testimony on, but this is a partnership between the City Fire Department, Missoula City Fire Department, and Partnership Health Center that provides a clinician and an emergency medical technician to respond to mental health calls. They've seen more than 1,511 calls in their first year of service, and about 67% of those are for folks who are housed, and they're able to provide treatment right on site, and those folks are able to remain in their residence. Another one of those innovative services that we've been able to do over the last year and expand in this case is a service called Emergency Winter Shelter. And this helps to make sure that those who are unhoused have a warm place during the coldest winter months. That's a partnership between the city of Missoula, the Poverello Center, and Missoula County to help fund that. They have seen a little over 100 people on their busiest nights at that facility. And of course, about 80, sorry, it's difficult for me to see the slide on mine, so I'm looking at the monitor. About 98% of those folks, I think that's, or it might be 88%, sorry about that, of the people served, 98 are at the extremely low income level, which means they're making less than 30% of the area median income. I get a new prescription tomorrow, and then I'll be able to read the slides at a distance. Sorry, so the Temporary Safe Outdoor Space is a dynamic program that was a partnership between United Way, the Hope Rescue Mission, and Missoula County. This is a secure location outside in the county that allows people to come and work through the process of getting documents and other items that they might need, as well as wraparound services to help them get into permanent housing. They've already been successful in getting more than 30 individuals into permanent housing, and there can be up to 40 individuals at the site at any one given time, and they have an extensive waiting list at this time. So, and then the most recent service that we stood up in this particular area is the Authorized Campsite. This is a partnership between Partnership Health Center, the city of Missoula, as well as the Poverello Center, and many other partners who are down providing services at an authorized campsite off Clark Fork Way. There are 40 campsites with up to 40 people in them, but on average, there are about 60 residents there. They receive medical services through Partnership Health Center and tenancy support, as you heard, and also services from the Poverello's Hot Team and other community partners that we've been fortunate to bring to the table. This is probably our most dynamic site. It's an evolving site as we go through the process, which means every week there are new changes as we continue to work through with service providers and others to make sure that we're providing services for the residents there and meeting their needs. The last one I'll touch on before I summarize public comment here is the crime victims advocate. As we all know, during the COVID pandemic, we've seen a significant increase in crime in the Missoula area, which is not atypical of what we've seen across the country. So the Crime Victims Advocate Service is being supported with additional funding to help make sure that the victims of crime or people who have needs for things like temporary protection orders are served by those crime victims advocates. And so that's what this funding would continue to do. So as we've talked about, again, right now we are using approximately $5 million in ARPA or one-time funding from the American Rescue Plan each year to fund those services. Those services were funded in fiscal year 22 and 23 through that one-time funding source. And you've been approached by members of the community to consider placing a permanent funding source onto the November ballot. You opened your public comment period a little over, well, exactly 2 weeks ago now. Sorry. During that time, you've received approximately 15 public comments as of this morning, and 2 more came in while we were sitting here getting ready for the meeting, so 17 public comments. 3 of those comments asked for additional information related to the cost of that, and you'll see that in the potential ballot language, but just for everyone's information, if the commissioners were to authorize up to 20 mills, that would be $27 per year for every $100,000 in taxable value, keeping in mind that taxable value and sale value are 2 very different numbers. We had 2 comments that indicated concerns related to the provision of additional services, which may result in drawing more people to the area. 6 commenters expressed concern that property taxes were too high and that the commission should not put this or any other measure on the ballot in November. 1 comment was concerned that these programs were started with one-time funding without a long-term funding program. And as the commissioners and the public is aware, these were unique dollars in the form of ARPA that had targeted areas in which they had to be spent, and housing and mental health are 2 of those areas. 4 comments were just generally supportive of the levy, believing that there was a need to continue to provide these services. You received a letter of support signed by more than 60 community members and organizations noting the critical nature of the services and the need for them to continue, as well as the Missoula City Council during their committee of the whole meeting on July 27th voted 9-1 to put forward a resolution of support asking the county commissioners to place this on their levy. They will take final action at their August 8th meeting, but it is not anticipated that that vote will change. So this is the draft ballot language, and then I'll stop here and allow you to open it up for additional public comment here so that you can consider that before you consider a motion. But the ballot language, should you choose to move forward with this, would say, shall the Board of County Commissioners of Missoula County, the county, be authorized to levy permanently, up to 20 mills per year to raise approximately $5 million per year to pay costs of services supporting people in crisis, including services addressing mental health, addiction, homelessness, and facilitating criminal justice reforms. If this mill levy proposition is passed based on current taxable values of the county, the property taxes on a home with an assessed market value of $100,000 would increase by $27 per year, and property taxes on a home with an assessed market value of $200,000 would increase by $54 per year. And just as a clarifying point, the reason $100,000 and $200,000 is used in the ballot language as statutorily, those 2 amounts must be included in the ballot language when you calculate it. The $100,000 allows you then to calculate additional up or down based on that. And with that, I would pause the presentation, and should the commission, after hearing public comment and deliberation, like a motion, I have a draft motion that I can put up as well.
Thanks, Chris. We'll begin with public comment. We'll begin with the folks in the room. You'll have 3 minutes, and then we'll move to folks online. Come on up, or you can queue up however you guys want to organize yourselves.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Commissioners, my name is Shannon Flanagan. I'm a lifelong Missoulian, and I'm here today as a community volunteer who's leading the effort of a friends group in support of the Crisis Services Levy. I also own the local Mazda dealership, Flanagan Motors Mazda.
Soon, ARPA funding provided by to Missoula by federal government will run out, and there is no plan in place currently to fund programs supported by them. Without replacing this funding, the program that the city, county, and its partners have created to support those of us in the community experiencing struggles with homelessness, addiction, and mental health will disappear. Missoula County has been innovative about finding effective ways to help people in crisis, whether it's homelessness, living with mental health challenges and addiction, or crime victims. It's about compassion and leadership. Our community doesn't turn its back on problems or on people in need. Some of these results are outlined in the letter of support that I sent you earlier today, and I have copies if you need those. The challenges of homelessness, addiction, and mental health are complicated. The ARPA funding that has been so effectively used to address these issues has seen the orchestration of 14 different services working together to keep Missoulians safe. Some of those programs include the mobile support team, the temporary safe outdoor space, the winter shelter, and programs supporting crime victims. I bring this to your attention because there is a chance that the proposed use of this funding is misunderstood. These programs are not about giving people a handout. They are programs designed to meet people where they are at and provide them with the services that they need to get back on their feet and on their path to a better life. The challenges we are facing here are also fluid and changing. Homelessness is closer at hand to all Missoulians than it has been in the past. I have a friend whose family has over $80,000 in household income facing homelessness because the rental home that they lived in was sold. When the new owners moved in, they had to move out. They were forced to hit the notoriously tight rental market to discover what they had no longer existed. Without a family to live with, they're dealing with the real possibility that they're going to be homeless. The Authorized Campsite and the temporary safe outdoor space are among the programs I mentioned that can help people with problems like this. Today, we have a choice. We shouldn't turn our back on progress, but build on the gains we've made. This levy is needed to continue programs that work, that help people in crisis, and that help keep our communities safe. We cannot bridge a $5 million funding loss by reworking the city and county budget, and the solutions we're looking for are provided by the proposed crisis services levy. It is for these reasons that I am asking the county commissioners to allow Missoulians to choose our own path by putting the crisis services levy on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Mhm.
No, that's the peer problem. That's
Oh.
Okay. My name is Janice Staton. That's Staton. We are here representing First United Methodist Church at 300 East Main. We have been a downtown congregation in the heart of Missoula since 1871. That's 150 years. We've just completed a major remodel of our building to ensure that we can be here another 150 years on the corner of Washington and Main. More than 60 members of our congregation are active in supporting homeless families through Family Promise, making Polverello sandwich lunches every week. Y'all are free to join us, and as advocates in the Homeless Advocate Network. We know from our firsthand experience that the crisis services that the county created during the pandemic are vital for people we care about and care for in the community. Mental illness and untreated addictions fuel homelessness, create dangerous behavior, and diminish the well-being of all of us. First United Methodist Church has already signed the letter of support from the community that is supporting this levy. Our members are almost all homeowners. We are property taxpayers, and we recognize that this levy will add to our taxes. We are fully in support of placing it on the November ballot so that we can vote in favor. Thank you.
My name is Joe
John.
Los, and also with First United Methodist Church and volunteer with the Housing Advocate Network. And I'm not going to add to anything Jenna said, just ditto. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Jill Bonney. I'm the executive director of the Poverello Center. I first want to say that supporting our neighbors in crisis makes our community stronger as a whole. The Poverello Center serves some of the most vulnerable individuals in Missoula. Last winter, we averaged 100 people at the emergency winter shelter each night. These are the folks that are most likely to die on the street, and the emergency winter shelter provides them with safety from the elements as well as a hub of resources for their journey into housing. The accessibility created by Emergency Winter Shelter allows Poverello staff to help people who may not otherwise access our daytime services. For the past 2 winters, we've been able to report that 0 individuals have died on the street due to exposure in Montana's harsh winter weather. This is a direct result of the Emergency Winter Shelter. I've been doing this work for several years, and I can tell you many years prior to the past 2 winters, we were not able to say that. Going backwards will cost lives. Let me say that again. If we do not continue to have additional shelter available in the winter for Missoulians living without housing, we could end up reporting that some of our neighbors died on the street in the cold. We can't go back to letting people die on our streets. In addition to the emergency winter shelter, the Poverello's Homeless Outreach Team, fondly known as the HOT Team, provides outreach to locations like the Authorized Campsite and the Temporary Safe Outdoor Space. HOT provides referrals to services and follow up with the hope that individuals will end up in a housing situation, as well as life-saving food and gear in these locations. As individuals move around, trying to find a safe place to sleep each night, it can be tough for the HOT team to locate and follow up with individuals. The Authorized Campsite provides a location for people to be every night, so they not only have to worry about finding a place safe to sleep each night, but the HOT team can find them to provide items and assistance to streamline their path into housing. Placing this levy on the ballot supports progress for Missoula as a whole, and we ask that the commissioners support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
Good afternoon. Jim Hicks. I'm the Executive Director for Hope Rescue Mission, and I ask that this crisis services levy be placed on the November ballot for these following reasons. Over the past 2 years, we've experienced positive outcomes because of the collaborative partnerships Missoula has as we serve those who are experiencing houselessness, mental illness, and substance abuse. We have learned that people do not normally grow from the chaos of the trifecta mentioned to order without someone coming alongside to give them some assistance. This levy will provide that assistance. Those in need have the need of relationships to help them move forward. We cannot simultaneously complain about our neighbors on the street and at the same time do nothing for getting them off the street. At the Temporary Safe Outdoor Space, the last 2 years, we've served 133 people. 39 of those have received permanent housing. Right now, we have peer support specialists that are working with those to move them forward. We have 2 that have vouchers and have vouchers in hand, and 4 of them that are in the process. We have 12 that are working through the process of getting ready for when they come up for referral, 2 that qualify for housing because of beds in a recovery center. We have learned, and we're learning, and it's been a learning curve, and we haven't learned it all yet. There's so much that we don't know yet, that the challenges that folks face are usually revolve around broken relationships with themselves, with others, and with the world. They need a network of relationships and accountability to move forward. So that's why we ask for this crisis services levy to be placed on the ballot for these 3 things in particular: that the partnerships, the collaboration, and the momentum that we've gained will continue to move forward for Missoulians. Second, that this invaluable path forward out of chaos into order and accountability will be sustained. And 3, that all of us, the housed and the unhoused, will find purpose in working together for a better Missoula. Let me close with this. A business owner called me who opposed us when we started the TSOS. And he said, I was against you when you began to operate the TSOS. One morning, I came out of my business and there was someone sleeping on the dock. assumed that they were homeless, assumed all kinds of things, he said. So he went over to nudge him, wake him up, get him moving. And he said, to my surprise, it was one of my valued employees. And what had happened is he had hit a rough spot and had lost his housing and could not replace his housing. He said to me, this changes everything. The homeless issue is now real. It's out my doorstep. We proceeded to work out a path forward so he could anonymously help this person find some housing, and we were grateful to do that. The Crisis Services Levy is imperative for the progress in bringing about transformational development to all, both the housed and the unhoused in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, hello. My name is Dr. Jen Molloy, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Social Work and here at the University of Montana. And before this, I worked at the Utah Criminal Justice Center as a research analyst. So I've really spent my whole career exploring ways to create a more humane, responsive, and restorative system of justice. I've explored ways to increase community safety, reduce recidivism, and improve communities and systems responses to individuals in crisis. So I stand here as a fellow community member requesting you put the Crisis Service Levy on our ballot. As a restorative justice researcher and practitioner, I have witnessed and studied the ways communities around the nation have taken steps and instituted best practices to ensure the safety and well-being of all of their citizens. I'm impressed by Missoula's efforts to implement crisis intervention programs, and the intro we got to those shows the extensiveness of them. And the many criminal justice reforms are what I really want to speak to. The justice system is not intended to serve the many needs that it does today. The substance use and mental health treatment to issues of poverty and trauma and violence. It should not and cannot be a place to house individuals in mental crises because we have no other place to serve them. These efforts are making an impact, and with more funding, they'll continue to grow. There will be synergy between efforts and emergence of new ways of doing business. And I see that happening already. As a professor of social work, I'm committed to training social work students to serve these efforts. As the adage goes, hurt people hurt people. So if we are interested in safety, these measures are already having an impact. If we're interested in cost savings, these measures are already proactively addressing many of the issues individuals are contending with that bring them into contact with law enforcement and land them in our jails, or contact with first responders, which land them in our emergency rooms. These paths are not cost effective. They do not address root causes of the challenges or serve our community's greater good. And this crisis levy, if passed, will increase funding for services which I think are and will do that. I've worked with incarcerated individuals, returning citizens, and youth engaged in risk-taking behavior that bring them into contact with the justice system. And I've sought to understand their needs and community supports necessary to succeed. The best practices Missoula has initiated and seeks to continue to fund, they are proactive, effective, and must be sustained for a community and its most vulnerable to experience long-term success. And by success, I mean improved physical and mental health, decreased substance use, reduced recidivism and justice system involvement, housing, right? And to be active, involved community members. We must reject punitive responses to harm that seek to punish and isolate offenders and those who are struggling, and instead promote community responses that support healing, connection, and reintegration. So in closing, I really trust our voters to embrace these efforts and to support this levy if given the opportunity. We not only will change individual lives, we will change generations to come. Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom McGuire, and I'm the Executive Director for Service Lines and Outreach at St. Patrick Hospital, and I'm here representing Providence St. Patrick Hospital. I'd like to start by stating that 1 in 4 avoidable admissions to our emergency room currently are mental health related. Currently, one of the only ways to receive mental health services is through emergency departments and local hospitals, especially when you are in crisis. An example of where this proposed levy would help is the crisis receiving center that is being developed now right here in Missoula. A crisis receiving center would provide appropriate access points for mental health services and free up the emergency departments to treat traumas and other physical ailments. The state of Montana currently only has one crisis receiving center, and it's in Billings. Others are being discussed in Great Falls, Bozeman, and Helen, I believe. The center in Billings last year had 13,000 visits. My colleagues and I spent 2 days at that center last year watching operations and interviewing their director. One of our key takeaways was that this Billings Crisis Center had been open for 15 years and without a doubt would have closed its doors many years ago if not for a similar mill levy that passed in Yellowstone County. The center in Billings has great relationships with the other mental health services in Billings, including Native American services and the emergency rooms of both hospitals. In order to treat residents of Western Montana, Missoula needs to pass the mill levy for the future of behavioral health. We owe this to Montanans. I, along with the board, administration, providers, caregivers at Providence, fully support placing this mill levy on the November ballot. Thank you for letting me speak to support this.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, my name is April Seaton. I'm the Director of Outreach for Hope Rescue Mission, and I oversee the temporary safe outdoor space. And I just want to start off with sharing just the successes that have been out there and being an outreach team member or just being a part of outreach for so long. It's incredible to see the folks that I have walked with for quite some time actually moving forward in a more permanent solution and actually sustaining that success. When we put up the emergency or the TSOS as an emergency response, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know what we were going to do, but we knew that we needed to make sure that the people that we were already serving had a place to be so we can continue working with them. So along the process, I remember asking for a chance to allow us to do this and to see what would happen through the process. But the success of it is shown, the numbers is shown that working one-on-one as a peer support model and working with the individuals with a resource-rich environment, it gives them an opportunity to be able to have a safe place to just leave their stuff if they want to go to work, to leave their campsite, to actually think about what can I do now because I'm not in survival mode, and able to approach us like, how can you help? It took a long time to build that trust and to actually get them to a place where they would say yes and go over there. I think it would be detrimental to the relationships that we have built, if anything, and these programs were to change because of the trust that we have built. So I just asked that, like I asked for a chance in the beginning, I just asked that we put this on the ballot so we can continue moving forward and watching the lives transform. But I do want to introduce Linda. She actually stayed out at the TSOS. She's a participant.
Thank you, April.
Hi, my name is Linda Clark. I'm actually TSOS's success story. And I was homeless for 3 years before I got into TSOS. I was a domestic violence survivor, and they enabled me a safe place to be and where I could work on myself. And I have permanent housing now, and life is getting better. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I'm Sean. I'm also a part of the TSOS success story, I guess, but my story is way different. Without the TSOS, I would be one of the people that the crime victim advocates would have had to warn you guys about. 8 years ago, I was on a fast track to basically suicide by cop. And I met someone, they introduced me to the TSOS. And from there, I've got 18 months sober now. I've got a daughter, I've got a wife, I've got a job, I've got a house, I've got hope, and that's something that people don't realize that that's all we need, is the ability to show that we can actually be more than what our circumstances provide, because I don't know if any of you guys have ever been homeless, but it's survival mode 24/7. You can't even leave your pack of cigarettes anywhere without them getting taken or your stuff, and that's not fair to anybody. Nobody wants to live like that. And so if you guys put this on the November ballot, you guys will be saving way more lives than you guys even know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Hello, my name is Sarah Robinson and I work as an ER nurse dedicated to serving this community. I'm here today to encourage you to put the crisis intervention levy on the ballot. And here's some of my reasons why. As an ER nurse, I have first-hand experience with some of the difficulties our community is facing as our population is increasing and how they directly and sometimes negatively impact our healthcare resources. Specifically, the increase in the number of people under the influence of drugs or alcohol or suffering from addiction brought to the emergency department. They occupy hospital beds for lengthy periods of time, which is costly and diverts care from people who are in actual medical emergencies. That could be your grandmother having a stroke, your dad having a heart attack, children having seizures. Just the other day, I had to watch a family lose a loved one while there was someone intoxicated in the hallway yelling. I don't think that's a very appropriate situation to be losing a loved one in, and could be avoided with services that could provide for that specific kind of person. And this is every shift I work that I'm caring for some patient under the influence of one thing or the other. And it doesn't feel like I'm giving care so much as babysitting sometimes, and feels a little messy. And being drunk is not necessarily always a medical emergency. Patients in emergent situations such as heart attacks or strokes, time is of the essence, and they're usually in the ER for less than an hour, whereas people who are under the influence could be in the ER for 8 hours or more while we seek to find the services that they need. A crisis receiving center would provide a safe space with specific services at a greatly reduced cost spent in care and human resources without diverting anything from patients who are in actual medical emergencies. And I think that other people have kind of touched on that subject, in that the healthcare system isn't the specific place to serve that population. I think it's extremely important and vital at this time to separate people who are under the influence or suffering from addiction from people in medical emergencies. Please put this crisis intervention mill on the levy, on the ballot, so we can have a crisis receiving center that we desperately need.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Williams. I'm here representing St. Patrick Hospital. I'm the Director of Psychiatric Services. There's an increasing need for a robust crisis system within our community that goes beyond what we currently have in place. Through the collaboration of Missoula County and city agencies, community stakeholders, and the Missoula's Strategic Alliance for Improved Behavioral Health, we have made great strides in improving our crisis system of care. This has resulted in innovative projects like the mobile support team that was discussed, and collaborative efforts to develop and establish a crisis stabilization center. While these efforts are moving forward, there is still more work to be done that requires more support to garner a greater impact. The goal is to bring people in Missoula County the right services at the right time in the right way. Mental health touches us in all aspects of our lives. Those seeking help are our coworkers, our family, and our friends. Increasing access to crisis care is not only what our community needs, but deserves. The need has grown increasingly evident within our emergency services over the last few years and has become pronounced as we navigate an ongoing pandemic. An example of this is the 30% increase in those seeking mental health services within our EDs since 2019. Therefore, I urge you to move forward with placing the proposed mill levy on the ballot to support the future of our community and its resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Abby Harnett, and I am the Crisis Division Director with Western Montana Mental Health Center. So I oversee all the crisis programming for Western Montana, including the local campus here in Missoula. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak in favor of this levy and to reiterate the notion that fulfilling the crisis continuum of care will ensure that Missoula County citizens receive effective interventions at the right time and in the right environment. In a trend that has proven to significantly improve client care and treatment outcomes, providing immediate access to the behavioral health needs of our community has become a priority for Western Montana Mental Health Center and its many community partners. We have seen the immense benefits for our clients when they receive immediate access to mental health care and have witnessed the long-term success that accompanies programs that address the whole person care and client-centered support. It is a well-known fact that mental health emergencies have increased across the board and demands for crisis services and programs have risen exponentially. Even before the pandemic, demand for mental health services was increasing, but the pandemic has only increased the need and made the situation more challenging and urgent. The pandemic has also resulted in a substantial intensification of acuity of the clients we serve, making the continuation and implementation of new evidence-based crisis intervention services, such as a crisis receiving center, that much more meaningful and vital to the care of the community. Unfortunately, the lack of adequate state funding for these programs has resulted in poor access to crisis services and an incomplete system of care. However, this funding will undoubtedly allow the county to improve access to services and the ability to create programs that have the power to significantly improve the lives of our neighbors. Mental health care spending changes lives and saves money, and that is definitely worth investing in. I will leave you with a quick story of success when a program works well. As you know, we have our Dakota House here, our Crisis Stabilization Center in Missoula. We had a client just last week write us to tell us about his success after leaving the crisis program. And he said, I want to extend a huge hug and a very big thank you to you all for your help that you have provided me. I am doing 1000% better and could not have accomplished what I have done without the help of your services. And he started out in our crisis program and then moved into our SUD treatment programs and is now living independently and doing really well. So I want to thank you for your time, and on behalf of Western Montana Mental Health Center, I want to extend my full support of this levy being placed on the ballot. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chaz Rourke. I work at Partnership Health Center on the community care team, and I'm the outreach administrator. I'm here to just tell you a little bit about what the approved camping space and some of these other services has done for Partnership. Basically, the approved camping site provides a foundation for this homeless population to move through really tricky systems, including the housing system and the medical system. Because of the approved camping site, we're able to take housing tenancy specialist and a registered nurse to where the people are and work with them on a continual basis over a long period of time. Before the approved campsite, we'd go searching all over town, spend hours looking for one guy. Now they're all kind of in one spot. We can access them regularly. And it's incredibly important to be able to do that, to build the relationships necessary to have them engage in the systems we want them to. There's one young gentleman has taken me 4 months of asking him on a weekly basis if he's ready to talk to a doctor. He finally said, yes, I need a job. In order to get a job, I need some meds. In order to get my meds, I need to see a doctor. And now he's working full time, living at ACS and moving up in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaz.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Jakewith. I also work at Partnership Health Center on the community care team. I am the registered nurse. I also just want to stand here and speak for all these incredible services that are offered here. And specifically, I want to reference the approved campsite. It's been an incredible space to reach people. As a nurse, I can go out there and provide wound care, ER follow-up, med management, and help connect patients to primary care. One story I'd like to share is when I first started about 6 months ago, we met a gentleman out there recently released from prison, very psychotic, suffering from his delusions. And he felt comfortable enough to ask for a medication that he needed, which was the long-acting injection. Prior to working with us, he had multiple run-ins at the ER with the jail system and 11 plus admissions to Montana State Hospital. Since working with us and in combination with PD, EMS, fire, and the mobile support team, we've been able to provide his long-acting shot pretty consistently. And I was giving it to him out at ACS, and now he's able to walk into our clinic and get it himself. He's doing great. His behavior has turned around, and he's thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
My name's JP. I'm just a community member who's been working with the houseless community in Missoula for the last couple of years, mostly in food dignity and hydration. What I will say, I'm very pleased with all of the positive comments. I'm here to speak in support of the mill levy. I feel, though, it is worth saying, since it hasn't been said yet, I do not feel that it is enough. I understand that it is too late to rework it this year, but you should know what's happening at places like the ACS, the Emergency Warming Street Shelter, and so on. I work a lot at J Street during the winters, and they've run out of food consistently in the weekends. Luckily, there's folks who will come there and bring food of their own accord, but the funding wasn't enough then. The ACS, they haven't had sanitation services recently. And recently during the heat wave, they didn't have water, and they had run-ins with law enforcement because they weren't provided water. This mill levy is a start. We have tried throwing these people in prison. We have tried sending the cops out to deal with them. It does not work. So we are trying something new. And it's working. But if it's going to succeed as much as it can, you need to fund it as much as you can. And I know for a fact that there are tens of millions of dollars in the budget, because I've read them, that are being allocated to solutions that haven't worked in the past. And I guarantee you that all of the people who work for places like the Mobile Support Team and PHC and St. Patrick's and everywhere else that has been represented here tonight aren't making enough. They are suffering from burnout, and we are losing valuable people who have developed relationships over years with the residents at places like ACS, J Street, and the TSOS. And it's unacceptable. And again, just like if we lost the emergency warming shelter, we would lose lives. As we lose those relationships, we lose a lot of progress with those people. So I do think that it's pretty much a given that this needs to be on the ballot. But I just wanted on the record that this county and the city and all of our regional government needs to do more and hold yourselves to a higher level. Thanks.
Thank you, JP. Anyone else in Sophie Moise want to speak? Okay, we'll move to folks online. If you're able to, use the raise hand function. Okay, looks like we have Lori Franklin.
Here I am. Thank you. Thank you so much for the chance to talk and support the Crisis Services Initiative as a ballot measure. You've heard quite a bit now about how effective these programs are and how they're giving people in crisis an opportunity to live a better life. And I don't need to say another word about that because that's a given. But I want to speak from the point of view of being a rabbi and a representative of a congregation of people who are motivated by faith. And what I want to say here is this is an opportunity for our entire community to do something that's truly healing, that's humane, that offers dignity to people who are in a down place. Our job is to hold each other up and take care of each other. And so I don't need to repeat the statistics. I don't need to tell success stories because a lot more of that will come out. But I want to say that this is truly an opportunity for us as a county to do something superb, to continue these programs that really help people, that change lives, that transform paths, and do it from the point of view of it's the right thing to do. So I thank you for putting it on the ballot. I hope that that is the conclusion of this meeting. And then all of us who are in support of this need to get out there and convince people how good it is, how important it is that they vote yes in favor of the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Melissa Madison Stone.
Good afternoon. My name's Melissa Matassa Stone.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's a mouthful. I've been a Missoula County resident for 17 years and have lived in the Missoula city limits that entire time. I'm here today as a community member.
I'm also one of the executive officers at WGM Group, and I've served as the chair of the board for the United Way of Missoula County in 2020 and 2021. In short, I support the crisis intervention levy and encourage the county commission to place the levy on the November election ballot. I have a short story for you and the why behind my support. Story first. Early in the pandemic, I was one of the people who helped with the United Way's COVID-19 Assistance Fund. I spent hours on the phone with people across Missoula County who needed help making ends meet as they lost their job or were shuffling childcare commitments. It was heartbreaking to hear these people's stories, but also transformational to hear how as little as $400 would make the difference between making it to the next month or not, or staying housed or not. We were able to help a lot of people, but was just one part of the need we see in the Missoula in the face of rising housing costs and the ability of those in crisis to have shelter, among other services. Our community has made tremendous progress in helping people back on their feet through these programs, as others have described. In my professional life, I think a lot about community and specifically strengthening community for the future. Investing in this crisis intervention, it's the right thing to do. We all benefit as a community when people are housed and cared for. And it's the smart thing to do. Without a permanent funding source, we'll squander the progress we've made. This levy is an opportunity to support our community for the future. Please place the levy on the November ballot, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa. Bart Cook.
Good afternoon. My name is actually Doug Cook. I'm
sorry.
That's all right. I'm a clinician and case facilitator on the mobile support team, and I'm actually taking a break from our case facilitation work to be here. Those of you who may not be as familiar with our program, we do acute crisis response, but we also do short-term case facilitation, working to get individuals connected with the resources that can really help them with their specific needs. Just to provide the most up-to-date numbers, we responded to 220 calls last month. And as indicated previously, over 60% of those calls resulted in the individual staying in place and being diverted from either jail or the emergency room. Perhaps most effective might be to provide a snapshot of what we've done over the last 24 hours or so. This morning, one of our crisis response team responded to a suicidal individual and spent part of the morning working with them. Our other crisis response team and a case facilitation team worked with an older brother and sister who were evicted into homeless yesterday. The sister has a terminal illness, and the brother has mental illness and is also suffering the beginnings of some cognitive decline. They're temporarily sheltered for the time being, but this morning we were able to assist getting their belongings into a storage unit, and also discovered this morning that the brother is having some medical issues, and we're able to coordinate with PHC to get him a same day appointment, which ultimately resulted in him going to the emergency room for some medical issues. While all that was happening, our full-time case facilitator was working with multiple clients that she's been working with consistently and helping them get connected with the resources they need. So that's the kind of thing we do, 220 calls a month. We do those kinds of things on a daily basis while we're on shift from 10 to 8. So I just wanted to provide some current numbers and a snapshot of the work we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Cindy Weiss.
Good afternoon. Let me turn my camera on here. Good afternoon. I'm the YWCA Missoula Executive Director. Since 1975, the YWCA has provided shelter for domestic violence survivors. And 13 years ago, we began offering emergency housing for families, in part because family homelessness is so strongly linked to domestic violence that up to 70% of the homeless families in our community are headed by a single mom who fled a violent home. Today, we operate 4 residential programs, and in the last year, these programs provided emergency, transitional, and permanent housing to over 600 people including 175 families and 300 unsheltered children. And most of the people we house are staying in the 2 emergency shelters located in the YWCA's Meadowlark facility. And it is there that every day I witness the struggles they encounter and the efforts they make to find stable homes of their own. As we all know, rental costs have skyrocketed beyond what the families and domestic violence survivors can afford. Some of the adults we shelter struggle with mental health, disability, or addiction issues. And these health issues could be more easily managed, but many are living with deep poverty that makes it very difficult for them to get the early and intensive care that they need. And without the means to effectively address these health issues, many unhoused individuals and domestic violence survivors will continue to struggle to find and maintain permanent housing. And these are some of the reasons that I'm here today. You know, we are a community that helps our less fortunate and struggling neighbors because we care. And being unsheltered is one of the most desperate and disruptive things that can happen to someone. Fortunately, Missoula has made tremendous progress in the last 2 years to provide shelter so that everyone has a safe, warm place to sleep and the crisis services they need to get back on their feet. This investment in shelter and crisis services not only helps our most vulnerable community members, but it also saves taxpayer money because housed and supported people rely less on emergency services, including law enforcement and hospital emergency rooms. The YWCA has relied on some of these newly implemented and enhanced services to offer holistic support to the people we serve. And I want to call out 2 of these programs that offer crucial and regular services for our residential clients. The Crime Victim Advocate Program works with many of the domestic violence survivors who reside at our shelter. The CVAs help our shelter residents secure orders of protection and support them through court proceedings, often making it possible for our residents to leave our shelter and safely return to their own homes. The mobile support team has been a godsend when we have residential clients experiencing acute mental health crisis. Our staff depends on the team to respond quickly and adeptly, and not only is this a comfort to our staff, but it enables us to continue to shelter people whose crisis-related behaviors may have otherwise resulted in them returning to homelessness. As we all know, for the past 2 years, these crucial programs have been supported by federal ARPA funds that will soon run out, and we cannot let the loss of funding put an end to or diminish these programs that are critical to the community response to homelessness. That is why I fully support a Missoula County Crisis Intervention Levy to fund these and other crisis services. It is the right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do for our community. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and so I urge you to place the proposed levy on the November ballot so all Missoulians have the opportunity to voice their support for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I think I saw Joyce Dombrowski on, but I can't see whose hands are raised. Maybe we'll come back that, or is inadvertent, okay. Is there anyone on the phone? *6. If you're on the phone, press *6 and you should be able to connect. Okay, any other hands raised? Is there anyone in Sophie Moise who would like to speak, who hasn't spoken? Okay, well, that we'll close public comment. Commissioners will discuss.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, thanks everyone for participating both virtually and in the room here with us today. I think we've all heard some pretty moving and compelling stories firsthand of those who have experienced homelessness and have benefited from services like the temporary safe outdoor space. We've heard from faith community members, health professionals, and just concerned citizens. The time for hand wringing, my friends, is over. It is time to get to business, and there are lots of things that we as Missoula County can do, and there are lots of limitations in terms of what we have the ability to do to address the crisis services needs in our community. We do not have tens of millions of dollars stashed in bags sitting in our courthouse here. But one of the things that we can do is put to the voters of Missoula County the opportunity and the question to adopt a levy. That is something that we can do. That is something that I'm grateful that community members have stepped up and brought before us today. And I look forward to supporting giving all of you and Missoula County residents that opportunity.
Thanks. Well said. I too would like to thank everybody who came out to speak today. I know everyone has busy lives and other things to do, and it means a lot that we had the professionals who came out here today, the citizens, workers, all people from all walks of life came to speak on these issues, and it means a lot. So first, I want to speak a bit on the mental health side of things, because we've heard a lot of talk today about unhoused individuals. The MST, the mobile support team, these folks are reaching out to people who are in mental health crisis, whether they're housed or not housed. Turns out about 60% of the folks are housed. With mental health, it's not a matter of if, but when it touches every single family. If you put yourself in those shoes for a moment, do you want your loved one waiting this moment of crisis, possibly the worst day of their life, in jail, or in the back of a squad car, or in the hallway at the emergency room? Would you rather have people meet them, literally meet them geographically where they are, and de-escalate the situation in place, which is what happens more than most of the time with the mobile support team? This is kind of cutting edge active mental health. This is what's happening in mostly larger places than ours in other parts of the country. We're part, once again, of the leading edge here. So on to the folks who are unhoused. I believe there's kind of a spectrum of care, and I don't mean giving care like the continuum of care we heard from Western Montana Mental Health. I mean what you as an individual care about. There are folks on one side of this issue that see people living out there in the urban wild and say, how can we allow our brothers and sisters to live like this when we're the richest country in the world? On the other side of the spectrum, you have people who say, if I see another blue tarp blown in the wind, I'm going to throw a rock through a window. What happened to my community? It used to be clean and safe. The measures we're talking about today, creating spaces for people to meet everyone on that spectrum of care. And all of us are on that spectrum of care in different places, literally depending on where we are. If there are folks camping illegally across from your house, you may be thinking, I don't want to look at that. If they're far from you, you might be thinking, well, we ought to help them. Well, by creating places for people to be, we're making it so they're not in places where we don't want them to be. Taking these measures is a great step forward so no one is living on the street, whether it's because you are deeply hurt compassionately or whether you just don't want to look at it. Either way, this helps solve the problem. And the only way we get there is through making an investment. So what I imagine we're about to do is leave it up to the voters to make that investment. Do you want to continue to have a clean, peaceful, careful, caregiving community that looks out for everyone and makes sure that businesses have clean areas in front of where they are, and that the least of us get to lead good lives as well, or not? Want to make a motion? Yeah, no, I'm offering to my friends.
No, I will absolutely make the motion. So I move that the Board of County Commissioners authorize the placement of a mill levy election on the November 2022 general election ballot, asking the voters of Missoula County to consider a permanent levy to be called the Crisis Services Levy in the amount of 20 mills, approximately $5 million, for the purpose of the provision of services that support people in crisis, including people who suffer from issues related to mental health, homelessness, and addiction, and who would benefit from criminal justice reform.
I'll second that.
Okay. And JP, thank you for your call to action, and this is a great opportunity for the community to invest. So all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go on to 7B. Riverside Industrial, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Bio break, important, thank you. We'll come back in 5 minutes, so I can't read that clock, so I don't trust it. What time is it now? Okay, 3:10, we'll get started. Thanks everyone for your patience. We were here yakking and I lost track of the time. Okay, it's Ben Schmidt, A. Air quality, sorry, 7A is what I'm trying to say. Air quality program rule concurrence.
Yeah. Hi, this is Ben Schmidt. I'm an air quality specialist with the Missoula City County Health Department. We're here asking the Board of County Commissioners to concur with the proposed changes to the air pollution control program. I'm going to try to share screens now.
Not quite happening in here. Oh, now it is.
Yeah, I got the blue circles going. Oh, okay. Blue
There we
circles
go.
have stopped. So it just took a little while for everything to get processed, I guess. I would like to say that a lot of these changes we're doing are basically fixing spelling, grammar, punctuation, things like that. Some reference errors that cropped up over the years. In this rule update, we literally went through every sentence of our air pollution control program trying to find, changes or inaccuracies and reference errors that had occurred over the last several decades. And hopefully we found all of them, or at least most of them. Part of this presentation, what I will do is briefly go over the substantive changes that go beyond those simple fixes. Okay, so as part of this outreach, what we've done for these rule changes is that we've gone to a lot of the air quality advisory councils that overlook the air program or help guide the air program. We sent emails to interested parties because a lot of these some of these rules affect the Sea Lake area. We've attended Sea Lake community councils, keeping them informed, written several articles for the Pathfinder. We also attended community council meetings in Frenchtown, Bonner Milltown, Lolo, East Missoula, legal ads in the Missoulian, and we've also sent drafts of these proposed rule changes to the state and the EPA just to see if they had any recommendations or comments. So now changing the air program rules is a process. As you see, we did the public outreach, but after that public outreach is done, we've collected feedback from everybody on the proposed changes. We then have to go to the Air Pollution Control Board, then to the City Council for concurrence. And now we are at the point where we were trying to get concurrence from you, the Board of County Commissioners. From here, we will forward this package to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality for their review to make sure that everything we have changed is appropriate and meets all state requirements and state rules. From there, some of these will be sent on to the EPA for approval into the state implementation plan. And also the part of the EPA's job is to make sure our rules do not backslide. Since we have been a non-attainment area for particulate matter in the air and for carbon monoxide, part of EPA's job is to make sure that we're not doing changes that will help put us back into non-attainment for those pollutants. Okay, so now I'm going to launch into the substantive changes of these rules. And at the end, if there's any questions or we need a little bit more details, Sarah Cofield and I are here to answer those questions, because this is just going to be a rough basically a 40,000 foot overview of what these changes are. The Air Pollution Control Board hearing, we went into a lot of detail on these. So in chapters 4 and 7, which deal with what we call air alerts and outdoor burning, we are proposing that recreational fires be prohibited when air alerts or warnings are called. Right now, we're requiring that people don't use their wood stoves to heat their homes and such, but part of the loophole that's there is people who technically go out and do a recreational fire. That doesn't make a lot of sense from an air quality point of view. So we are proposing to limit that when alerts are called. General provisions, this is basically how the air program works, is what chapter 5 is about. One thing we're doing is we're clarifying how the Missoula City County Air Pollution Control Board can change fees that the Air Pollution Control Program levies for industrial permits and other permits of that nature. We've been doing this for a long time, but we just thought there was a better way to word that particular paragraph. The other substantive change in Chapter 5 is because the state of Montana, a few sessions ago at the state legislative sessions, changed how local air pollution control programs are required to change their rules. So what we did was we incorporated those state requirements into our rules, so we don't have two different methods out there that we have to try and follow to change our air pollution control program rules. For this particular rule change, we're following the old standards, or what are still our local air pollution control program rules for changing our rules, and the state ones. So this way we just sort of get those all to mesh. One change in Chapter 6, which is our industrial permitting and compliance chapter, things like gravel crushers, sawmills, things of that nature, is we are requesting that up to 2 times that an air quality permit be allowed to be extended if construction has not become complete in the first 36 months when that permit is issued. Chapter 7, outdoor burning, 2 changes there. The first one is we're clarifying how major burners operate in winter months when dispersion is frequently poor. We have a system in place. We think these rule changes just make it clear how that process will work for those winter months where dispersion is much worse than it is during your spring months where you need less oversight. The second thing we're doing is we're changing the conditional outdoor burning permits for off-site vegetation as long as it's done with an air curtain burner or air curtain destructor. This would also be allowed inside or outside of the Missoula air stagnation zone. One change in Chapter 8, which is our fugitive dust emissions. It's a funny name, I know, to say for road dust and things like that, fugitive dust, but that is how the term we use. What we're just saying here, or the change we're requesting, is that every now and then we get a situation where our paving rules in the air stagnation zone require paving in some place that isn't quite as optimal as if that paving was done at another location. For instance, let's say we have a new parking lot going in. Our rules may require paving at that parking lot. But then the person will say, well, we're on a gravel road. Can we instead pave the gravel access road instead of the parking lot? That makes total sense. You've got a situation on the road where traffic is faster. You get more dust being raised than you would on the parking lot. This allows us to sort of have a little bit of flexibilities in those rare cases where, you know, meeting the rules at a different location is actually a benefit to air quality and to the person who wants to do that project. Okay, Chapter 9 is our wood stoves, or what we call our solid fuel burning device chapter, because it includes things like pellet stoves, outdoor wood boilers, all sorts of small heating appliances that may be available. The first slide we're looking at here is we're talking about Seeley Lake. Seeley Lake has a problem, still has a problem meeting the National Ambient Air Quality Program for fine particulate matter in the air. So we still have some work to be done up there. During the wood stove change-out program between 2012 and 2014, we greatly improved the air quality up at Seeley Lake, but there's still more that needs to be done if we're going to start meeting those standards. So what we're proposing is that a Seeley Lake wood stove zone be created. I have a map of that small area, which I'll show you in a minute. The reason the area the size it is we find that the air quality issues in Seeley Lake are really a neighborhood issue. It's not a regional issue, so we are able to basically focus our attention and our resources on a small area for our more structured rules than we have to for a wide area. What we would be requiring in that Seeley Lake wood stove zone is any newly installed solid fuel burning device meet the 2020 emission standards. What that means is basically there's a federal standard put out by the EPA for emissions for all new devices that are sold at the retail outlets. What we're saying is that if you do install in this area, you have to put in ones that are compliant with that 2020 standard. The other caveat we have in there, or other requirement, would be that that would still be 70% energy efficient. Okay, hopefully you can see this map well enough. You can see like there in the blue in the middle and left-hand side. One part there, if you can see it, is the white roof of the elementary school, which is near where the monitor is. So what this area includes is really the more settled area around the elementary school and around Pyramid Mountain Lumber, plus a little bit going north where there's potentially some future development that is in that neighborhood area. Excuse me, neighborhood area where we're having troubles meeting the standard for fine particulate matter in the air. The other change that we are requesting in Chapter 9 is that all wood stoves be removed upon change of owner in the Missoula air stagnation zone. Right now, the rules require all wood stoves be removed, including inserts, unless they were a Class 1 device installed between 1986 and 1994. So a wood stove has not legally been installed in the Missoula air stagnation zone since 1994, which means that it's been about 28 years. As our population grows, as the amount that each of us can put into the air and still stay under standard keeps getting a little bit smaller, we have to start looking at, so we believe, removing these stoves that were installed at that time and met the Class 1 criteria, just so we can stay underneath the fine particulate matter standard, which we do still occasionally approach, so in the winter time. The other change is we're removing the requirement for the certificate of compliance form in the Missoula air stagnation zone. This is the case of between 1994 and 2000, a vast majority of our older wood stoves were removed. It's a lot of work now to keep running that certificate of compliance program without a lot of benefit. We will have to continue working with the Board of Realtors and individual realtors and outreach and education, letting them know, anyone involved in the real estate market, that, hey, if there's a wood stove in a house in the air stagnation zone or in an outbuilding or a garage, it does need to be removed when that property changes ownership. And that's the second bullet point on this slide is talking about we have to keep working with the various groups around the community to make sure that the program is done. Chapter 10 deals with fuels. The only substantive change there is we are requesting that if we ever get approval from the state or the federal government to discontinue the oxygenated fuel program, that was a great benefit to carbon monoxide and air pollution with carbon monoxide in the early 90s when this was first implemented. With changing technology, this requirement really has no impact on air quality. Requiring oxygenated fuel and for an air quality is really not accomplishing anything anymore. So when we get permission or authorization, we would like to discontinue that program. Again, because there's no real air quality benefits from it anymore, it really does not belong in the air program. Chapter 14 is our enforcement and administrative procedures section that deals with things, like variance requests, hearings, just basically how people can disagree with findings that we may do in that kind of process. The one change we're asking for here is we want to clarify that a person has 15 days to request a hearing before the Air Pollution Control Board if they disagree with an administrative review conclusion or decision. 15 days has been the standard since I started here in 1991, but it really wasn't specified that was in there. Excuse me, the rules did not really specify that 15 days, and we just like to put it in there so it's very clear what the time frame is for the response. And that's the rough overview. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Ben. Does Sarah or Elena, do you have anything to add? I don't know if.
No, I think that Ben did a good job covering it.
Well, Josh, Dave, how do you guys feel?
You good?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? I don't see, there we go. Okay, yes.
Jim Bashan, Missoula Organization of Realtors. We submitted a letter of support back on April 15th, and I'm just here to reiterate that we're in support of this. We think this is a good collaborative effort, private-public partnership. We think these changes are really beneficial, and if anything, we think this is a step forward and not necessarily a step backwards. We think there's be better controls in place. I think the last thing that Ben mentioned on the 15 days is really strong, and I think that helps homeowners be able to have an opportunity if it doesn't work for them. So thank you for the time.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
I'm good if there's a
Okay.
motion.
And we're all about stepping forward and not backwards. So.
Are you making a motion?
Yes. Thank you.
Let's-
I would request that the BCC concurrence on proposed changes to the air pollution control program rules. Did I say that right?
Is that the right?
Is worded kind of oddly.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Do you want to try it again? With the period?
Reading the same words.
I'll second that.
There we go. Thank you. The inflection was wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I was ready for a verb that just wasn't there. All right.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Thanks for everybody's hard work on this. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Riverside Industrial Major Subdivision, Matt Heimel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Matt Heimel with the County Planning Office, and I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint for Riverside Major Subdivision, Riverside Industrial Major Subdivision. Entire screen, right? Yeah. This one? Oh. Yeah. Oh, okay. There we are. Okay, so today's the scheduled public hearing for Riverside Industrial Major Subdivision. So in this PowerPoint, I will provide a broad overview with some highlights of the staff report and the proposal. The packet for today includes the full staff report, a summary of Planning Board's motions, and also the complete application material. So if at any point, if you'd like me to stop and explain something or go to a different file and have some more detail, feel free to just ask. So the applicant for the subdivision is Riverside Contracting, represented by WGM Group. The property is located at 8247 Deshaw Lane, which is at the northwest corner of Moccasin and Deshaw Lanes. The 160-acre property is proposed to be divided into 36 lots, and 11 of which are for residential, or excuse me, 11 of which for industrial use, 24 for residential, and 1 workings land lots. There are also 2 variance requests from transportation standards, which I will explain a few minutes later. And staff is recommending approval of the request subject to 32 conditions, which I will also provide an overview on soon. So this proposal has already gone to the City County Planning Board, and on July 19th of this year, the board unanimously voted with 6 members present to recommend approval of the subdivision and both variances with amended conditions of approval, and I'll go over those amendments in a few minutes as well. Some points of discussion during the planning board hearing included the potential for residential build out and mixed use within the subdivision. We had some clarification about parkland and common area, information on existing uses. The planning board made some comments about prospects for industrial growth in the Y and the phasing of infrastructure, and the board also expressed some concerns for water use in the future and making sure that there's water-wise development. Overall, we did receive 3 public comments in favor of the proposal, and we did receive 1 comment that is an objection to the proposal, citing some concerns on traffic impacts. And those public comments are included with the packet in a Missoula County Voice engagement summary. So here's a aerial image showing the vicinity for the project, highlighted in the center of the screen. As I said, it's at the northwest corner of Moccasin and Deschaux Lanes, southwest of the Y, also southwest of Highway 10 and Interstate 90. Adjacent land uses to the east include some light industrial uses. To the south, we have residential use, and to the west and north, there are agricultural uses. This image is showing the subject property with some closer detail. The property is mostly vacant. There is an existing gravel crushing operation on the northwest portion of the property with direct access leading to Deschaux Lane. And in the southwest portion of the property, or lower left-hand side, there's an existing single-family home with direct access to Moccasin Lane. Otherwise, the property is mostly consists of grasses. There was some former agricultural use, however, due to some limited water rights availability, that use has been pretty limited in recent years, according to the application.
And Matt, you said that gravel crushing, it's crushing, it's not, the gravel comes from somewhere else. They're not digging the gravel up there, correct?
That's right, yeah, based on the application and what we've heard from the applicant's representative, yes.
Thanks.
So this image shows the proposed lot layout superimposed on the aerial imagery. So we have 3 distinct parts of this subdivision. Moving clockwise from the upper left-hand corner, we have the 42-acre working lands lot. And then the industrial portion of the subdivision is about 58 acres with 24 proposed lots and some internal roads, which I'll highlight in a bit here. And then the southwest portion of the lot, about 60 acres, is intended for residential use. The subdivision is proposed to be developed in 2 phases. So the working lands and industrial portions and their all associated infrastructure will be in phase 1, which includes 25 lots, and that would be filed or proposed to be filed by 2025. And the residential portion with its infrastructure would be developed and filed by 2028 as phase 2. And I have a note here that phase commencement hearings are required. So what that means is that prior to filing a phase, the applicants will need to submit documentation to the county declaring the intent to commence filing of a certain phase. And at that time, the county will re-review for the primary impact review criteria in subdivisions. And if there are new information or new findings on impacts, then the county may impose new conditions of approval. This slide shows the land use designations for the property. So there are 3 land use designations that correspond to the 3 aspects of the subdivision. We have working lands, industrial center, and planned neighborhood, the 3 of which are from the 2019 Missoula area land use element, which was an amendment to the 2016 Missoula County Growth Policy. And to implement those land use designations, we have new Missoula County zoning districts, which were effective for the property on July 1st of 2022. Now, this subdivision application was deemed sufficient in April of 2022. So for zoning compliance, the subdivision is vested for review as unzoned property. However, future build out of individual lots will need to be reviewed for zoning compliance. So we have the agricultural working 40 district with a 1 dwelling unit per 40 acres. We have the industrial center light district for industrial uses, and the neighborhood residential district, which has a minimum residential density of 1 dwelling unit per 8 acres. Or, excuse me, I misspoke there. Neighborhood residential has a minimum of 8 dwelling units per acre. Pretty important distinction there. So the next, or this and the next 2 slides have some highlights on the preliminary plat, just to point out some key aspects of the subdivision. And then I have a few slides that will show closer details of the plat And if you'd like me to actually pull up the preliminary plat document itself, I'd be happy to do so, and then we can zoom into specific details. So on this slide, I'm highlighting some transportation aspects. So first, note that the industrial lots have an average size of 2.31 acres approximately, and residential lots average about 4.8 acres. So we have a few new internal roads with public access easements. Those we built out to county road standards, and the urban area standards apply for new transportation infrastructure. Moccasin Lane is shown on the south edge of the plat, and that will be improved to county road standards. And Dayshaw Lane is technically an off-site road on the east boundary. And however, the applicant's proposing to pave that, or to widen the road and also build a sidewalk. We have sidewalks proposed adjacent to all on-site roads. And within the residential portion along Road E in the lower left-hand side, we see that there are multiple easements for future roads and alleys. So those are going to be platted as public access and utility easements. However, they won't be developed with phase 2 of the subdivision, but they are intended for future subdivision or future development on those lots may utilize those easements. And they are also providing connectivity to adjacent properties and providing connectivity within the subdivision itself. On this slide, I'm highlighting some other plat elements. So there is a high pressure gas line that bisects the property, and that will be platted within its own utility easement and no build zone with some certain allowances and notes for how to coordinate with the pipeline. We have fire suppression cisterns throughout the property. We have 3 groups of fire suppression cisterns, 2 of which are in the industrial portion, 1 group of cisterns for the residential portion. There are multiple storm drainage easements and retention ponds. And there is a common area strip that goes along the high pressure gas line and then moves southward along the east edge of the residential portion. And that is also to provide both a buffer between the residential and industrial portions, and also a buffer from the high pressure gas line area as well. So the industrial portion will be served by a public water supply with 4 wells, and those are shown on this slide. And the residential portion is proposed to have individual wells for each lot with drain fields. There are various utility easements connecting that infrastructure. Note that those lines may look like they are in isolation. However, each road easement is also a public access and utility easements. These lines in green are solely utility easements, which connect the wells and also provide areas for water mains and sewer mains within the industrial portion. And the industrial lots will also be served by a community drain field. So the area in orange in the middle of the plat, that will have the treatment system, drain field, and also a replacement drain field area. So here is just an image of the north half of the plat. And again, if there are any specific aspects you'd like me to highlight, please just let me know. And then here is the south half. If you'd like to move back and forth or highlight things again.
Is there anything interesting that we're not asking you?
Well, it's all very interesting. Those last few slides, I think.
But between these 2 slides, is there something we're missing?
Yeah, one thing I just want to get your take on it. It seems like this, I guess, second phase here, the residential piece, could look one way in the near term, but in the not too distant future, when sewer is out here, would look radically different.
Right. We expect to see build out for phase 2 in accordance with the neighborhood residential zoning, which is a minimum density of 8.
That's a lot more houses than are right here.
Right. So the subdivision application was best for review as unzoned and propose single family lots. However, with phase 2 commencement, we will be able to re-review for the impact criteria, determine if there are new impacts that could warrant new conditions of approval.
Yeah, that's all great, given that we need housing, and this is a perfectly good place for more housing.
Sorry to disrupt your flow.
Oh, it's fine.
I keep going.
So as I promised, I'll go over a couple of the variance requests we have for this subdivision. So the first request is to vary from section 3.4.7.3, requiring curb, gutter, and boulevard construction for all on-site roads. So as I said before, transportation standards for the urban area apply, which requires curb, gutter, and boulevard. However, in the variance application, the applicant cites some soil characteristics that may prove challenging for drainage using curb and gutter. So drainage swales are proposed for all on-site roads. In our review of the variance, staff found that for the industrial lots, it is not out of the character for other industrial development in the Y, and that in the residential portion, the context that would make drainage swales appropriate for industrial is not really the same as the residential. We expect to see higher density development in the residential portion. So having the roads developed to our urban road sections will be critical to really accommodate that in the future. So planning board and staff recommend approval of the variance, allowing construction of drainage swales for new on-site roads in the industrial portion, with a condition that curbs, gutters, and boulevard be constructed for Road E and Moccasin Lane. And on the right-hand portion of the screen, you can see the industrial portion highlighted. In blue, we see roads where the condition would allow the drainage swales, and on the left side in red, roads that require the curb, gutter, and boulevard. Our second variance request is from table 3.4.9.4, which requires 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Moccasin Lane and Road E. So in the planned neighborhood land use designation, which requires a density of 8 units per acre or greater, the requirement is 5-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the road. And that would apply to Road E and Moccasin Lane where it's adjacent to the residential lots. In the variance application, the applicant is citing the anticipated low density growth that could happen here with single family units. However, we know that with neighborhood residential zoning, we will have the minimum of 8 units per acre or greater. So we're recommending approval of the variance for Moccasin Lane, but requiring the 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of Road E. And the reason that staff and the planning board recommend approval from the variance for just a portion of Moccasin Lane is that there is no development associated with this subdivision on the south side of Moccasin Lane. So the requirement for sidewalk on the south side would not be directly proportional to the impacts of this subdivision. So on this slide, I have all of the subdivision review criteria, and I'll leave that here for a couple minutes while I highlight some I just summarize the conditions of approval. So we don't have conditions that relate to every one of these review criteria, but we have some standard conditions related to the preliminary plat, complying to what was proposed, notification for adjacent agricultural activities. Conditions 3 through 10 relate to roads. And we have standard conditions related to review of proposed roads by Public Works prior to final plat approval, some conditions related to clarifying the width of those road easements. One condition of approval was specifically regarding road maintenance. And during the BCC CAPS update on Monday, we discussed briefly the prospect of road maintenance. So these will be public road easements with a private road maintenance agreement. And in the proposed covenants, there are some general aspects for road maintenance. However, this condition will add some additional details. So we have in condition 10, requirement for a more detailed description of those road maintenance activities, designation of responsible parties, and assurance that the developer will perform that maintenance, and really making sure that that road maintenance agreement is very clear for what can happen, and also allowing the county to step in and use a surety in case that road maintenance is not taking place. There are some standard conditions for grading and drainage plan review by Public Works. There are a few conditions related to the review of pedestrian facilities, including a boulevard landscaping maintenance plan. For water and wastewater, we have conditions mainly related to maintenance agreements and notification within the covenants of required maintenance activities. The common area that I referred to earlier was going to be proposed, or was proposed as a parkland dedication. However, the common area strip does not meet the parkland design standards. So we're recommending that be cash in lieu of parkland. There are various conditions for fire suppression, ranging from specify or clarifying the maintenance agreement, having notification in the covenants. And we do have a condition that the review and approval of cisterns for fire suppression take place prior to a combustible construction. Under hazardous lands, we do have a condition for clarifying the no build zone within the high pressure gas line area. And should also highlight again that we have a condition relating to the phasing plan. So prior to filing of each phase, as I said, we will have that review for impacts if there is new information. So earlier I mentioned that we have a couple amendments to conditions of approval. So this is relating to, so we have condition of approval 7, and this amendment was proposed by the applicant, and this is to clarify when the installation of curb, gutter, and boulevard will occur on Moccasin Lane. So Moccasin Lane will be improved to a 32-foot width with 2-foot shoulders with phase 1 adjacent to the industrial portion. However, we will see the curb gutter construction with phase 2. And this amendment really just clarifies that. Instead of saying appropriate phase, which can be vague, we're directly saying it's phase 2. And then to follow suit, in a very wordy condition, we will clarify that instead of each phase for the maintenance plan details, we're looking at the appropriate phase. So condition number 12 with some very long sentences is essentially saying that there are maintenance details that we'll have to have for the swales and maintenance details for curb and gutter. And there are appropriate phases for each rather than requiring curb gutter information for phase 1, for example. So that wraps up my overview of the report. We do have the applicant's representative on the call today, and there may also be members of the public who wish to comment on this proposal.
Thanks so much, Matt. Jamie Erbacher or anyone from WGM want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Matt. We do just have a quick presentation if that works for you guys.
For sure.
All right, should be able to see my screen now.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present today, and thank you for staff for all their coordination efforts over the past few years. I'd like to start out by talking about the guiding principles for community planning that have taken shape in Missoula, and more specifically in the Y area over the past few years. So as this slide says, we are one community. We're a community composed of centers, corridors, neighborhoods, and natural spaces with unique identities. We're connected through opportunities, whether that be the place we live, work, or how we communicate, our education, or where we recreate. These guiding principles led Missoula County to amend and adopt the growth policy in 2016, the land use element in 2019. They also created a targeted economic development district at the Y, and adopted the new zoning regulations just recently. These policy and regulatory documents help mold our community in an orderly fashion while protecting the natural environment and providing opportunities for all of us to work and play. So why the Y? First, we need to look at the area as a whole. We already have an industrial hub at the Y. This industrial hub brings workers from all over Missoula, but also includes those from the Bitterroot, communities up north, and Frenchtown. There's great access from Dayshaw Lane to I-90 and access to Mullen Road, both of which feed into Reserve Street. We have an ever-growing residential community out here as well, essentially establishing a bedroom community. While the old zoning somewhat hindered development at the Y, the new zoning, in combination with the newly created Targeted Economic Development District, will allow expansion of deficient infrastructure, job creation, and the ability to build denser community where folks already work.
As Matt mentioned in his presentation, the subdivision was originally deemed sufficient while unzoned. However, since new zoning was planned on this property, we worked with the county to ensure that the subdivision would be zoning compliant in the future. As recommended by the growth policy, the zoning will allow a planned neighborhood to be developed, the expansion of the industrial hub, and also allow the continued use of the existing gravel crushing operation. The zoning is in line with the growth policy and the county goals, and will be developed how the county had envisioned. With that said, though, that doesn't mean there are existing limitations to development. In particular, those limitations are centered around infrastructure. The county recently adopted the Y area TED, and as you can see, the area of deficient infrastructure is fairly large and is shown in green on my screen. It includes a portion of the Riverside Industrial subdivision property as well. Areas of deficient infrastructure include water, sewer, roads, and stormwater drainage. When the TED was created, only those areas within the black dashed outline could be included in the TED. Areas outside of the black dashed line were either unzoned or zoning did not match the growth policy and therefore could not be included. Now, though, through the county zoning efforts, these areas have been zoned in compliance with the growth policy, which could allow for a future TED expansion. Missoula is growing. We need housing, and we need the ability to create jobs. While the city of Missoula is a wonderful place to live, we need to provide an opportunity for residents to live where they work or where they currently, or relocate closer to where they could work. 30% of our job force currently comes from Valley County. But why? Because Missoula housing is in short supply, and the closer one lives to the city or within the city limits, homes are more expensive, pushing our workforce out of the county. So through these subdivision efforts, we can start to plan the neighborhood the county envisioned and add new locations for places of employment. We can focus on creating attainable housing where folks can qualify for rural development housing loans and allow them the opportunity to live where they work. We can create increment for the tax district to allow improvements to water, sewer, roads, and storm drainage. We can further the goals of the community and create a sustainable development. While some may be concerned about residential uses adjacent to industrial uses or the gravel crushing operation, we need to remind ourselves that this was considered when the growth policy amendment occurred in 2019. Through this process, we must assume that the vision included providing housing next to employment. And in fact, you can see the existing residential neighborhood to the south is adjacent to the existing industrial district. The industrial uses proposed for this site will be light manufacturing and regulated for light, noise, and odor, some of which are the most concerning aspects of industrial uses. We see other areas of town where industrial uses are adjacent to or planned existing. We see other areas of town where industrial uses are adjacent to planned or other existing residential neighborhoods. So Bonner is a good example of this. And we've discovered if planned right, these uses can occur next to each other and still be within a livable community. One more example of this is the North Reserve Scott Street area. Here we see the areas of gray and purple representing industrial uses and yellow representing residential uses. So right now we are seeing this area of town being built out with residential uses, and those residential uses will be adjacent to those industrial uses. So from here, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jeff. And afterwards, we can be available to answer any questions that commissioners or the public may have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Matt, thank you, commissioners, for your consideration today. I'm Jeff Smith with WGM Group here representing the applicant. We're excited about this project and the progress it represents towards fulfilling the potential of the Y area. The slide here shows the proposed Y infrastructure planning area. This project represents meaningful progress towards improving the area's transportation network and has the potential to play a role in solving the region's water needs as well. See the next slide, Jamie. Thanks. Project proposes to improve a half mile of Moxon Lane to county standards with pedestrian facilities as well as Matt discussed. Likewise, a half mile of Dayshaw Lane will be improved to county standards as far as width goes and pedestrian facilities added as well. In total, a mile of existing county roads will be improved and fitted with walkways, not including the internal streets. I think outside of MDT's trail on Waldo Road, this will be the longest continuous pedestrian facility near the Y. The next slide, please. These are a couple slides from our traffic impact study, depicting vehicular distribution and dispersal from both the industrial and the residential portions of the project. I want to show this here in relation to a comment that was voiced by a member of the public around traffic impacts to the Moccasin Lane Bridge during planning board. There was some comment around the capacity of the bridge that's a little over a mile away down Moccasin and how this project might impact that. I just wanted to clarify, based on our vehicle counts and traffic engineering calculations, less than 1% of the traffic generated by this development is projected to travel westbound on Moccasin. This is primarily because the Deschamps Lane connection to Mullen, the highway and the interstate is so efficient and effective for transportation. So the next slide, please, Jamie. Here's the location of the Moccasin Lane Bridge in relation to the site. As a note, there is a regulatory weight limit for Moccasin Lane. It's posted as a 10-ton vehicular weight limit via sign on Moccasin near the intersection with Deschamps. Next slide, please. We plan to commence work towards building out and filing phase 1 immediately with a goal of constructing improvements on the industrial portion of the project in 2023. Ideally, we would be requesting the phase 1 commencement hearing in the near future if the project's allowed to move forward. So the development on this site can contribute towards tax increment for the YTED. We also plan to request expansion of the TED district to include the industrial portion of the project in that infrastructure deficient area that Jamie showed. Next slide, please. Thanks for your consideration. Certainly been a lot of planning around this area and has involved shaping where we are today. And we believe this is an important project for Missoula County and the community's goals for the Y area. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, anyone else from WGM or the applicant? Great. Well, is there any public comment on this proposal? We don't see any in Sophie Moise. Don't see any online. Oh, Dave.
Yeah, a question for Jamie or Jeff. So thanks for the information that you provided as far as other areas in Missoula County that in which there are residential and industrial uses juxtaposed next to each other. Although I will say they have come with, in some of the instances you've mentioned, come with its fair share of conflict, whether that's noise from the Bonner Mill side and adjoining properties property owners who have not found that too welcome. And so I guess my question is, as far as the case at hand here, while all the uses definitely and the proposal as presented definitely aligns with the land use element and the land use designations for this parcel, any thoughts on mitigating impacts from the gravel or rock crushing operation? Because that is typically the sort of industrial use that we get an earful from our constituents about, as opposed to other industrial uses. And maybe the folks who will reside next to this won't care about it, but what are your thoughts there?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. So we will have that common area buffer strip. And again, that will essentially just act as a buffer strip. And then since this gravel crushing operation exists already, the assumption will be that, folks that buy a home in this community will know that that exists. It is not an extraction site. It is simply just for crushing. If they do expansion, that will be evaluated by the county planning staff, and future industrial uses, as I mentioned, that will be regulated for noise, odor, and even lighting. The county zoning standards have really improved from what they were in the 1970s. So I do anticipate that, those concerns will be addressed through the new county zoning regulations.
Okay, thanks. I guess buyer beware, and well, I'm sure Missoula County will get blamed however you cut it, but that's okay.
That's not our intent. We
No,
don't want
no,
that.
I know it's not, but it comes with the territory.
My only comment other than, I'm glad you brought that up, Dave, because imagine gravel crushing as being a bit disruptive. But my only comment here is that I really appreciate the easements in the residential area to account for future development, that someday this could have 88 houses. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. Okay, well, no further comments? Is there a motion?
It could be, could you queue up the motion, please?
Sure, I'll bring those
Gotta
up
get the right
in,
verbs.
just a moment. There are 3 motions, so each of these would be its own motion made and its own vote before moving on to the next.
Okay, I would move to approve the request to vary from section 3.4.7.3 requiring curb, gutter, and boulevard construction for all on-site roads, subject to the recommended conditions of approval as amended.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I move to approve the request to vary from table 3.4.9.4 requiring 5-foot sidewalks on each side of Moccasin Lane and Road E, subject to the recommended conditions of approval as amended.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Oh, sorry. I move to approve the Riverside Industrial Major Subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval in the staff report as amended.
Second that.
Now, is there, this is different language than what's on the, but I'm sorry, the RCA, is that okay? Enough? We'll stick with this because there's 3 of them. So, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tim Worley, Crichton Subdivision Variance Requests.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Worley from CAPS, here to present Creighton Subdivision, which is a proposal from Creighton Appraisal PC represented by Ken Jenkins from Montana Northwest Company for 8 residential lots and 1 utility lot. The property is located in the Target Range neighborhood near the Clark Fork River. See if I can put a was going to put a laser on it, but I guess that's not going to work for me today. There's actually 2 properties involved, and many residents in Missoula are familiar with the 3 radio towers near the corner of South 3rd Street West and Clements. That's one of the 2 properties, and then a property immediately to the west that includes some river and some riparian area related to the Clark Fork River. So again, we're talking about 8 residential lots and 1 utility lot, with a single utility lot being proposed on the southeastern corner of the ownership. There would be 4.56 acres of common area dedicated, and it would be north and west of that blue line that's delineated on the plat. The growth policy for this area recommends a couple different distinct things. Actually, it's recommended for residential uses. The 2019 land use element recommends a density of up to 2 homes per acre. The 2010 target range plan actually recommends essentially what amounts to a down zone in this location at a density of 1 home per acre. But the density in question meets the lesser of the two, being 1 dwelling per 1.2 acres as a gross density. There's 1 cul-de-sac road proposed as part of this subdivision, and that's Creighton Avenue, which comes off of Clements as proposed. I'm not going to go into a full description of planning board and some of the conversations that have occurred, but I want to discuss the critical issue of channel migration and how it potentially impacts this subdivision. You can see the subdivision outline. That's one of the 2 ownerships. One of the 2 properties is within the channel migration zone. And commissioners, you're familiar with the study that was commissioned by the Water Quality District. With, in this case, the river portion of the property is in what's known as the historic migration zone. That's that blue shade, that blue color. Much of the landward portion of the property is in the erosion hazard area, or EHA. The erosion buffer area is the distance between an active stream bank where a river is likely to erode based on historic rates of movement. The erosion hazard area of the channel migration zone is generated by applying the erosion buffer width to the active channel bank line. The Water Quality District commented originally that 7 of the 10 lots are anticipated to be subject to extensive erosion. Some of the lots could be fully lost to channel migration. And I should note that lot 10 in the northwest corner was eliminated before the subdivision was deemed sufficient for review. At Planning Board, I did provide a couple of downstream examples of river erosion, particularly at 719 Walker. And I won't go into as much detail as I did at Planning Board, but what we discovered was between 2014 and 22, there was approximately 10,000 square feet of land lost to erosion along the Clark Fork River. And the westernmost of the 2 parcels that make up this subdivision is immediately east of 7119 Walker. And it has experienced some erosion, although not to the degree that you see here. So as we analyze mitigation of impacts, we found that the applicant did acknowledge that hardening solutions for the eroding river bank, including riprap, will have a negative impact on other properties. And there's some examples of that actually within the neighborhood. And within the floodplain regulations, riprap is prohibited. So the presence of existing homes in the erosion hazard area did raise the question, at least in the subdivision application, is there a comprehensive solution? Perhaps a comprehensive solution is the best way to go within the neighborhood, although we know of no such comprehensive solution to deal with this erosion hazard issue. So short of that, really what you're left with is protective setbacks or notification to future home buyers. So in subdivision, there's a fundamental state law obligation to reasonably minimize potentially significant adverse impacts on public health and safety. And we concluded that impacts to public health and safety because of the CMZ have not been mitigated with this design. And staff does recommend subdivision denial. However, we've heard a request from the applicant's representative for a 2-month delay to do a little bit more investigation and gather information about specific erosion and how it impacts this property. So commissioners, what we would recommend is that today that you take public comment and that you continue the hearing to a date certain, and that's the October 6th Board of County Commissioners hearing, to allow the applicant more time to investigate the erosion situation on the property. So that's all I have today, but I'll be here if you have any questions.
Thanks, Tim. Well, Ken Jenkins, or the applicant, do you have any thing to say today? Okay, is there any public comment on this? Oops, Ken is coming up.
Thank you, Ken Jenkins with Montana Northwest Company. The stream channel migration hazard study is sort of a Johnny-come-lately that happened in the middle of this subdivision review process. There are aspects of that study that we strongly disagree with, and the inclusion of the study as a regulatory document now in the zoning, I think is something that the public was not aware of for the most part. And to be honest, we were under the gun to have this subdivision submitted and sufficient for review prior to the zoning because of other issues in the zoning. This was one that we really didn't see. It was pretty well hidden in the back of things, the 390 some pages. So we didn't have a lot of time to react. And so at this point, if we can delay the decision, 2 months was a guess. I'm sure it took more than 2 months to do the study. And it's one study. And so I would appreciate extending out that much, and it's possible we may need more time. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay. Well, how,
I'm fine with this. Do we have motion language pertaining to the delay? Or do we just keep it open?
okay,
Just
so we'll
keep it
just
open.
keep it open until October 9th?
October 6th.
I'm sorry, dyslexia. Okay. Great. Well, so are you making a motion?
No,
do that? We can just
keep it open.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ken.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.